The courtroom clock had frozen at 11:42 a.m., though no one noticed. It wasn't broken, just forgotten. All eyes were on the man seated at the defense table. Daniel Carter, 33, mechanic, father, convict in waiting. 3 weeks earlier, Danny had taken a plea deal for a crime he swore he didn't commit: the theft of catalytic converters from Brooks Auto Salvage. The state offered 5 years. His public defender warned him it could have been worse. And his daughter Ellie Grace Carter, just turned 7, watched him sign away his freedom. Now sentencing day. The prosecutor, Kim Lawson, was already on her feet. She'd been assistant DA for Knox County for 8 years and wore confidence like perfume. "Your Honor," she began, "the state seeks the agreed 5-year term." This defendant pled guilty. He acknowledged a pattern of behavior: serial theft for resale, and admitted targeting a small business. "The law is clear." The judge raised a hand. Judge Walter Harlan, 61, was known for 2 things: fairness and the limp he refused to explain. He'd been on the bench long enough to remember when courtrooms still smelled like paper instead of screens. This morning, he looked tired but alert, like a man who'd seen the storm coming and chose not to run. "Ms. Lawson," he said, "I've read the memo. Let's keep it tight." She nodded, adjusted her blazer, and turned back to her notes. At the defense table, Sarah Pike, the private attorney who'd taken Danny's case pro bono after reading about it in the Knoxville Ledger, stood without flair. "Your Honor," she said, "Mr. Carter has no prior convictions. His employer confirms he was on another job when the theft occurred. The prosecution's entire timeline relies on circumstantial evidence and a surveillance video that doesn't show a license plate, face, or timestamp. You're a week late for trial," Lawson cut in. "Your client pled guilty." Sarah didn't flinch. "And he did so under pressure, without full disclosure of the state's evidence or lack thereof. We now have reason to believe a key piece of physical evidence, the catalytic converter, was never properly identified or linked to Mr. Carter's van." Judge Harlan scribbled something, then looked at Danny. "Mr. Carter," he said, "do you understand the charge in your plea?" "Yes, sir." "And you're aware the court may sentence you today?" Danny nodded. "Yes, sir." But he stopped, not because he didn't have more to say, but because someone had stood up. From the 3rd row, a little girl in a denim jacket had climbed onto the wooden pew. "Excuse me, Judge," Ellie said, voice small but clear. Harlan blinked. "Miss, my name is Ellie Carter. That's my gaddy." Danny tried to stand, but Sarah's hand stopped him. Ellie stepped forward, her grandmother, Miss May, hissing her name like a brake squeal. "I need to say something before you take him away." The bailiff stepped forward. "Ma'am, she's 7, Miss May said, half standing. "Let her speak." The room held its breath. Harlan leaned back. "You have something to say, Miss Ellie." Ellie nodded. "Yes, sir. Can I pray?" Silence. Not the polite kind. The kind that rewires the air. The court reporter looked up. The clerk dropped her pen. Kim Lawson rolled her eyes. "I don't think," she started, but Harlan raised a hand again. "Go ahead," he said. Ellie stepped to the aisle, folded her hands. "Dear God," she said, eyes closed, "I know this ain't church, but I think you're everywhere. So I ask you, please don't let them take my daddy. He didn't steal nothing. He makes breakfast every morning. He fixes cars that other people throw away. He calls me Grace, even when I mess up. He don't lie. 'Cause I ask him stuff and he always tells me the truth, even when it hurts. He said this place is where truth wins. So if you can hear me, please let truth win." She opened her eyes, looked at the judge. "Amen," she whispered. The courtroom didn't move. Judge Harlan stared at the girl. His lips pressed together. One hand gripped the armrest of his chair. Then, slowly, he reached for his gavel, but it never struck. Instead, he said, "Recess." 15 minutes. The bailiff's voice cracked as he called, All rise. Harlan stood with difficulty and walked out through the side door, his limp more pronounced than usual. Lawson snapped her folder shut. "This is absurd," she muttered. Sarah turned to Ellie, knelt beside her. "That was brave, sweetheart. You did good." Ellie nodded, but her eyes were wide. "Did it work? We'll see." Danny sat frozen. His throat worked, but no words came. He looked at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. Outside the courtroom, reporters gathered like vultures drawn by scent. One of them, Terrell Brooks, didn't move. He stood near the back, phone untouched, eyes still on the door where the judge had left. He whispered, mostly to himself, "Well, damn ... double quote cliffhanger." As the judge disappears behind closed doors, hearts pound on both sides of the aisle. What will 15 minutes mean, Mercy, or just delay? And why, behind that heavy door, does a man known for reason seem to be wrestling with something else entirely? Judge Harlan sat alone in his chambers, the air conditioner humming like distant thunder. He wasn't looking at case files. He was staring at his shoes. The left one felt different, not numb exactly, but aware. Like it remembered something it wasn't supposed to. 15 years ago, a car accident left him with a spinal cord injury. They said he'd never walk again. And he hadn't, not really. Not until a 7-year-old girl said a prayer that somehow tilted the room. He looked at the photo on his desk, himself in uniform, standing tall beside a courthouse flag. Taken 3 days before the crash, he hadn't stood since. Not until this morning, when his foot twitched during Ellie's prayer. A reflex, maybe. A fluke, but he felt it. He picked up the phone. "This is Judge Harlan. I want a stay of sentencing on State v. Carter. No judgment to be entered yet. Schedule an evidentiary hearing. Tomorrow morning. And get me the chain of custody logs for the catalytic converter." When he emerged from chambers, his expression gave nothing away. Back in the courtroom, gasps echoed as the judge returned to the bench. "Court will reconvene. Ms. Lawson, Mums Pike, approach." Both lawyers stepped forward. "The court is issuing a temporary stay of sentencing," he said. "We will reconvene tomorrow for an evidentiary hearing. In the meantime, the defendant remains remanded." Lawson blinked. "Your Honor, the plea is entered. The court has discretion to delay sentencing," he replied. "I intend to use it." Sarah Pike held back her reaction, but inside she was reeling. She didn't know what had changed the judge's mind. Maybe it was the GPS data. Maybe it was doubt. Maybe it was a little girl and a prayer. Ellie turned to her grandmother. "Does that mean Daddy's not going to jail?" Miss May smiled gently. "It means we have one more day to fight." The news traveled fast. That evening, Knoxville buzzed with speculation. Local news ran the story under the headline, "Little Girl's Prayer Delays Sentencing." Terrell Brooks didn't run it. Not yet, he was digging. He'd seen a lot in courtrooms, but something about the girl, the dad, and the way the judge hesitated didn't sit right. He went back to the scene of the alleged theft, Brooks Auto Salvage, and canvassed the surrounding houses. On his fourth door, he struck gold. A retired teacher with a doorbell camera. "Caught a black pickup that day," the man said. "Not the white van they keep talking about. Want the footage?" "Yes, sir. Please." Within minutes, Terrell had the clip. 1:47 p.m. Tuesday. A black F-150 rolling slow past the lot. No plate visible, but the time didn't match Danny's supposed window. Terrell forwarded the footage to a friend in tech. Maybe they could enhance it. Maybe not. But it was something. Meanwhile, Sarah worked late at her office. She combed through every scrap of evidence the state had provided. She found a discrepancy. The receipt for the converter didn't match the inventory number logged by the scrapyard. It was subtle. Easy to miss. But enough to raise questions. She fired off emails requesting GPS logs from Carter's work van. plus affidavits from 2 clients who saw him across town at the time of the theft. By midnight, she had one response, a time-stamped invoice signed by a Mr. Hobbs, time 2:03 p.m. The theft allegedly happened at 2 o'clock p.m. Sarah whispered to herself, "We're going to peel this apart." At home, Ellie lay in bed, wide awake. "Grandma," she whispered, "do you think God listens even when you're not in church?" Miss May, sitting by the window with her Bible open, looked over. "I think God listens best when we're desperate enough to whisper." Ellie clutched her tiny blanket frayed, faded, but soft against her fingers. She didn't know the whole story behind it, just that she'd had it forever. Down the hall, Danny lay on a cot, staring at the ceiling. His chest ached with 1,000 what-ifs. What if they hadn't offered the plea? What if he'd fought sooner? What if telling the truth about how he found Ellie all those years ago would help now or only hurt her? He had never used that story for sympathy. He had never wanted Ellie to feel like she was anyone's second chance. She was his daughter. That was it. That was everything. And now the truth might be the only thing that could save them both. The courthouse clock ticked past midnight. Tomorrow the fight would begin, for real this time. By 8:05 a.m., Sarah Pike was already in motion. She hadn't slept much, just enough to know her coffee needed to be twice as strong and her arguments twice as sharp. Her office looked like a conspiracy theory post-its, case files, photos, maps. A red pen circled the inconsistencies in the state's evidence, a misnumbered item tag, 2 conflicting timestamps, and a receipt from the scrapyard that listed the make and model of a part that couldn't possibly have come from Danny's van. She knew what she had to do. She dialed fast. "Danny," she said when he answered, voice gravel thick from a night of staring at the ceiling. "I need access to the shop van's GPS records." "I can get them," he said. "They're tied to the maintenance app. We log every route for insurance. Get him. And I need to talk to your boss." "I already did," Danny said. "He said to tell you to burn the whole damn courthouse down if you have to. He'll sign whatever you need." "Good," she said, scribbling notes. "We're going to make them prove everything. No more assumptions." Danny hesitated. "And if they do prove it?" Sarah paused. "Then we deal with that. But not before we make them earn every inch." Meanwhile, across town, Kim Lawson was briefing her team. "Defense is going to try and crack chain of custody," she said, tapping the whiteboard. "They'll say we can't prove the converter came from Carter's van, but remember, he pled guilty. We're not retrying this case, we're defending the plea." Her lead investigator, Hanley, shifted uncomfortably. "We might have a problem," Lawson turned. "What kind of problem?" "There's a missing signature on the converter log," he said. "It looks like the evidence changed hands without a full chain. Who signed it last? Could be Turner or Jarner. It's smudged." Lawson narrowed her eyes. "Then find out. Today." Back in her office, Sarah opened a laptop, pulled up the van's GPS logs, and traced the route from Danny's job that day. The van never went near Brooks Auto, not even close. Her phone buzzed. It was Tyrell. "I found something," he said. "Talk. Black F150. Doorbell cam caught it near the salvage yard. Time stamped at 1:47 p.m., not Carter's van. Looks like a partial plate. 5Z4G can't get the rest. Where's the footage?" "Sending now." Sarah opened the clip. The truck rolled slow, almost cautious. Something about the driver's posture stuck with her. "I'll need the original," she said. "And I need you to hold off publishing." Tyrell chuckled. "You're cute when you think you can tell me what to do." "Tyrell, I'm trying to get a man out of prison. A good man. A father. You post that too soon. The wrong person runs." There was a pause. Then, "All right. You've got 24 hours. Thank you." Sarah opened the footage in an editor, froze the frame at the clearest shot of the rear. There it was, a dent on the driver's side quarter panel. and the faint outline of a Titan's bumper sticker. Danny had mentioned a mechanic he fired, Caleb Sloan, who still flew a Titan's flag from his toolbox. Her heart dropped. She called Danny. Did Caleb drive a black F-150? Silence. Then, yeah, loud muffler. Had a dent on the back. Did you ever report him? I didn't want to stir trouble, Danny said. I just let him go. Well, he might have just stirred some for you. Across town, Ellie was sitting at the breakfast table, slowly pushing Cheerios around with her spoon. Miss May stood at the sink, humming low when she felt it. That change in air you can't quite name. She turned. You all right, baby? Ellie didn't look up. Grandma. Why do people lie when the truth hurts less? Miss May walked over, sat down beside her. Because sometimes the truth scares people more than pain. Pain they know, truth they don't. Ellie nodded slowly. Then said, I had a dream last night. Oh? You were holding me, and Daddy was standing next to a big hole. But then it filled up with water, and I heard music. I think it was a church song. Miss May's throat tightened. Dreams are funny things. They know what we're scared to say out loud. Ellie looked down at her old blanket. I think the song was for him. Sarah spent the afternoon gathering what she could, GPS records, surveillance footage, time-stamped work orders. But none of it would matter unless she could put it in front of someone who could act on it. She drove straight to the hospital. Judge Harlan had been readmitted for physical therapy just days earlier after a minor fall. The nurses waved Sarah through. He'd been expecting her. He sat in a chair near the window, robe folded neatly over his knees, a paperback of Faulkner open but unread. Ms. Pike, he said. Judge, she replied, setting her binder on the table between them. He didn't reach for it. I know the case, he said. I've read the filings. And I saw the girl. Sarah nodded. But I don't think this is about emotion. I think this is about a process that failed. She opened the binder. Chain of custody inconsistencies. GPS data that proves Carter wasn't at the scene. Video showing another vehicle. A possible alternate suspect. Harlan flipped through the pages slowly. His fingers paused at the photo of the F-150. I know that street, he said. That's 3 blocks from Brooks Auto, correct. Truck matches a known former employee of Carter's. Caleb Sloan. Fired for theft. He tapped the frame again. You think he planted evidence? I think he committed the theft. And I think someone took a shortcut linking it to Danny. The judge closed the binder. I'll reopen discovery for the hearing, he said. But I'll need testimony. Affidavits, not just suggestions. You'll have them, Sarah said. On her way out, she stopped. One more thing. Ellie's blanket, the one she always carries. Harlan looked up. She was found wrapped in it, abandoned. Danny never talks about it, but that's how he got her. In a box behind Riverbend Clinic, the judge didn't speak. Sometimes, Sarah said, we only see miracles after we almost throw them away. She left him with the binder. And the weight of that sentence. Sarah stood outside the courthouse, binder clutched tight under her arm. Autumn wind nipped at her heels. She wasn't nervous, she was loaded, ready. By 9 o'clock a.m., the evidentiary hearing began. Judge Harlan entered with a presence that silenced every throat in the room. His expression unreadable, but his hands slightly tighter on the gavel than usual. This hearing is to determine whether the sentencing of Daniel Carter shall proceed as entered, or if further review of material evidence warrants delay or reconsideration. He turned to Sarah. Miss Pike, your motion. Sarah rose smoothly. Your Honor, we contend that Mr. Carter's plea was entered under incomplete and potentially misleading evidence. We have documented inconsistencies in the physical chain of custody of the catalytic converter, contradictory time records, and new third-party video surveillance showing an alternate suspect vehicle, none of which were available at the time of plea. She stepped forward and placed the binder on the desk. Further, GPS data from the defendant's work van, along with signed client receipts, confirm he was across town during the time of the theft. Kim Lawson stood. Your Honor, we remind the court, this was a plea, not a trial. The defendant accepted guilt in exchange for a reduced sentence. The state acted on good faith evidence. Sarah countered. A plea made under incomplete or incorrect facts is not good faith. It's error. Judge Harlan nodded once. Proceed. First up was Amar Hobbs, a balding man in a grease-stained uniform. His hands shook as he spoke. Danny Carter fixed my lift pump that day. I signed the invoice myself. It was 2:03 p.m. He was right there. Lawson cross-examined. And you're certain it was the 5th, not another Tuesday? I checked the invoice just now, he replied. It's still on my damn wall. Then came the GPS custodian, a quiet woman from the fleet company. She projected a map onto the screen. Carter's van left the garage at 12:42 p.m. and traveled directly to Hobbs Auto. No detours, no stops near Brooks Auto Salvage. This is pulled from a satellite log with a 30-second refresh rate. Authenticated? The judge asked. She handed over the certificate. Yes, Your Honor. Lawson's eyes narrowed. Then came the video. Sarah clicked play. The courtroom watched a black F-150 roll past Brooks Auto at 1:47 p.m. Dent. Titan sticker. Faded paint on the bumper. No plate visible, but the truck lingered. It slowed. And then it turned off into the service alley. Judge Harlan leaned forward. Do we have a name on that truck? Sarah nodded. We believe it belongs to Caleb Sloan, a former employee of M.R. Carter, dismissed for theft 3 months prior. His vehicle matches the description, and he was unaccounted for during that time frame. Lawson objected. Speculative. No confirmation. We're working on a subpoena. In the meantime, Sarah added, we request access to the converter for independent lab analysis. Tool marks, residue, make and model compatibility. Judge Harlan nodded slowly. I'll allow it. Miss Lawson, you will release the evidence to the court-appointed expert this afternoon. Chain of custody must be fully documented. If we're going to verify guilt, let's do it with facts. Court adjourned. Danny exhaled so hard it felt like he'd emptied a decade. Outside, Sarah joined Terrell, who leaned against a lamppost, arms crossed. You got a moment? He asked. I'm listening. He pulled out a photo on his phone. That F-150? I followed it. It's parked 3 blocks from Dalton's scrapyard. Belongs to Sloan's cousin. Kid's laying low. You have a plate? Half of one. Enough for a private investigator to pull the rest. But there's something else. Tyrell swiped to a second photo. A man in a ball cap leaning into the passenger side window of the truck. He wore a blazer and a badge clip. Sarah's eyes narrowed. You think he's being threatened? I think someone's making sure he stays quiet. Back at Danny's house, Ellie sat on the couch drawing with crayons. Miss May was folding laundry when the knock came. 3 slow taps. Then silence. She opened the door to a man in plain clothes, badge visible. Detective Hanley, he said. We need to talk to Mr. Carter. Miss May stood firm. About what? A person of interest has come forward. We believe he may have information. Danny stepped into view behind her. What's his name? The detective didn't flinch. Caleb Sloan. Danny blinked once. We'll talk, he said. 2 hours later, Danny sat in a small interrogation room, facing Sloan across the table. Caleb looked thinner, nervous, still had that damn limp. I didn't know it was going to get pinned on you, Caleb said. I swear. They told me Dalton said nobody'd look too close. Said the cops just want a face. I didn't think they'd take your kid's dad. Danny leaned in. You're gonna tell the court everything. Caleb nodded, hands shaking. I'll write the statement. I'll do it. Meanwhile, back in the judge's hospital room, Harlan sat quietly as a physical therapist adjusted the straps on his legs. There was something he hadn't told anyone. When he stood just briefly the day before, it wasn't just a spasm. There had been pressure, a memory in the muscles, and now ... He could feel it again. The therapist watched him. "Try now," she said. And Judge Harlan, who hadn't walked since 2009, shifted forward. The therapist gasped. "You okay?" He gripped the walker. "I'm not okay," he whispered. "But something is happening." She said nothing, just stood with him in the quiet. Later that night, Tyrell filed his story. Headline: Truth in a Crayon Box. The prayer that broke the clock. He uploaded the court footage, the doorbell cam, the maps. But he held back one thing: the picture of Caleb and the man leaning into his window. That one he would save just in case someone decided justice was negotiable. And in a shoebox beneath her bed, Ellie placed her favorite drawing, a picture of her dad, the judge, and a heart between them. On the bottom, she'd written, "Truth wins." Caleb Sloan sat under fluorescent lights, his hands trembling around a foam coffee cup he hadn't touched. The district attorney's office conference room was too cold, too bright, too clean. It made lies harder to breathe through. Sarah Pike sat across from him, recorder already running. Next to her was Pennington, a federal liaison from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Caleb's eyes twitched at the badge. "You sure about this?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "You're here now," Pennington said. "Clock's ticking." Caleb took a breath. "I didn't mean for it to go like this. I was broke." Dalton said he could move a few converters for cash, no questions. "I grabbed him, middle of the day. I had that black F-150, borrowed it from my cousin." Sarah leaned forward. "Did you frame Danny Carter?" "No," Caleb said fast. "I didn't set him up. I mean, he was just an easy fall guy." Dalton said people believe it. White guy with a black kid. Small town whispers. They wouldn't dig too deep. Sarah's jaw tightened. "Did you know he had a daughter?" "Not at first. Then I saw the news clip, the prayer in court. And I couldn't sleep. He's a good man." Sarah slid a form across the table. "Sign this statement, now, and prepare to testify." Caleb hesitated. "They're gonna come after me. You know that, right?" "You talk now," Pennington said. "We keep you breathing." "You wait, Dalton won't let you see the sun," Caleb signed. Across town, Ellie and Miss May were in the church kitchen, helping pack paper bags of food for Sunday deliveries. Ellie hummed softly an old hymn about rivers and roads. "Can I ask something?" she said, tying a bag. "Course you can," Miss May replied, checking the list. "Why do people hate my daddy 'cause I don't look like him?" Miss May paused, carefully wiped her hands on a towel. "Some folks see different and get scared," she said. "They turn that fear into ugly things. But your daddy? He didn't see different. He saw you." Ellie nodded, not fully understanding, but understanding enough. "I had a dream again," she said. Miss May looked up. "Same dream?" Ellie nodded. The hole was deeper this time, but the music was louder. Back at the courthouse, Sarah filed a motion to vacate the plea entirely. With Caleb's signed statement, GPS data, ring footage, and chain of custody flaws, she had enough ammunition to not only exonerate Danny, but burn down the prosecution's credibility. Lawson received the motion by courier. When she opened it and saw Caleb's signed confession, she turned pale. She called her supervisor. "Do we bury this?" she asked, voice flat. There was silence on the other end. Then, "You think you can?" "That little girl's already gone viral." "Then what?" "Let it play out. Salvage what you can. And for God's sake, don't fight a miracle in public." That night, Danny sat with Sarah at his kitchen table, hands clasped. He hadn't spoken in nearly 5 minutes. "Say it," Sarah said gently. He looked up. "If I tell them where I found Ellie, that I pulled her out of a dumpster, am I helping her? Or am I making her a headline?" Sarah swallowed hard. "Only you can answer that. But if you don't speak, someone else will." He nodded slowly, reached under the table, and placed a faded, sealed envelope in front of her. Inside were photos, a police report, emergency custody papers. "I've never shown anyone that box," he said. "Not even her." Sarah looked at the date. 7 years ago, Riverbend Women's Clinic. Closed 2 days after a staff dispute. Trash collected late that night. The infant girl found wrapped in a shredded blanket with a hospital wristband and no name. Danny had been walking home, heard the crying. Found her in the alley behind the dumpster, not inside it, thank God. Called 911, stayed until police and EMS came. No one claimed her. CPS placed her in temporary care, but after weeks of check-ins and evaluations, Danny was granted emergency custody. 6 months later, he adopted her fully. "I didn't save her," he said. "She saved me." I didn't even believe in anything until that night. Sarah placed the envelope back in his hands. "Then let the world hear that from you, not from a file." The next morning, Judge Harlan prepared for what might be the most watched hearing of his career. He wore his black robe, but beneath it, something else. Braces on both legs, light support. The kind usually worn by those in rehab, not yet walking, but not far. His nurse noticed. "You sure about this?" "No," he said. "But some things you can't sit through." At the courthouse steps, Terrell Brooks was already setting up his live stream. "Y'all ready to see Knoxville history?" he asked his camera. "Because if what I'm hearing is true, this ain't just about guilt or innocence. It's about what kind of city we want to be." Inside, the courtroom buzzed. Ellie sat in the front row, holding Miss May's hand, her blanket tied around her wrist like a ribbon. Sarah adjusted her notes. Lawson stared straight ahead, hands tight in her lap. Judge Harlan entered. No announcement. No pageantry. He walked slowly to the bench, one careful step at a time. The room gasped. He didn't sit. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice steady but low. "I've reviewed the motion to vacate the plea of Daniel Carter. I've reviewed the evidence. And I've heard enough." He paused. Looked directly at Lawson. The state failed to disclose critical material. The evidence was incomplete. The chain of custody flawed. And the confession from Mr. Sloan, corroborated by GPS and video, makes clear Mr. Carter was not the perpetrator. He turned to Danny. "Mr. Carter, your plea is hereby withdrawn. Charges dismissed with prejudice. You are free to go." Danny didn't move. Ellie leapt from the pew, arms outstretched, and ran into his arms. The courtroom dissolved into applause, gasps, some sobs, but Judge Harlan raised a hand. "Before we adjourn," he said, "I'd like to allow Mr. Carter a statement." Danny looked at Sarah. She nodded. He stood, walked slowly to the front, Ellie still holding his hand. And then, with a quiet that silenced the world, he told the truth. Danny Carter stood at the center of the courtroom, hands folded in front of him. Ellie clung to his side, eyes searching his face as if she knew something big was coming, but not what. He looked out across the room. People leaned forward, phones recording, reporters scribbling. Even Judge Harlan, still standing, seemed to brace himself. "I never wanted this story told," Danny began. "Not because it's shameful, but because it's sacred. Some things feel too fragile to explain." He swallowed hard. The courtroom waited. 7 years ago, I was walking home from a night shift, tired, beat down. Thought about sleeping in my truck instead of going back to that tiny apartment I couldn't afford. I took a shortcut behind Riverbend Women's Clinic. He paused, reached into his coat, pulled out a small worn paper. "This is the emergency custody document. And this," he held up a photo, "is what I saw." He turned the picture around. A newborn, wrapped in a blood-speckled blanket, laying in a cardboard box beside a green dumpster. Eyes closed. Mouth open, mid-cry. A hospital band loose around one wrist. "I heard her before I saw her. That sound," It wasn't just crying. It was surviving. Like her soul was demanding to be known. A woman in the gallery wept quietly. Danny continued. I called 911, stayed there until EMS came. I didn't know her name. No one did. The hospital called her Baby Jane Doe, but I couldn't forget that cry. Couldn't walk away. He looked down at Ellie, who now held his hand tighter. She stayed in foster care for a while, but no one came for her. And I couldn't stop checking. I visited, took her blankets, read her stories through the glass. And when they told me no one had claimed her after 60 days, I asked if I could. He smiled, eyes misting. They said, "Sir, that's not how this works." And I said, "Maybe it should be." Ellie leaned her head against his hip. So they let me try, background check, home study, classes, paperwork. It took 6 months. But on the day the judge signed the adoption papers, I told Ellie her full name. I called her Ellie Grace. Grace because she was given to me when I didn't deserve anything good. He looked around again. Now the room was still frozen. I raised her best I could, never told her the full story. I wanted her to feel wanted, not saved. But this week, this courtroom reminded me that truth has power. And love is truth too. He turned to Judge Harlan. I don't want sympathy. I don't want fame. I just want to go home with my daughter and live our quiet life. He stepped back. Harlan looked like he wanted to speak, but he only nodded. Court was adjourned. Reporters swarmed. The clip of Danny's speech hit national news before lunch. CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox led with the headline, "Father speaks after miracle acquittal." Photos of Ellie and her blanket filled every feed. Social media lit up with hashtags. Hashtag ELLIES prayer. Hashtag dumpster to daughter. Hashtag truth wins. Tyrell Brooks was asked to appear on multiple networks. He declined all of them. Instead, he aired a special report titled, "The Man Who Didn't Run." It showed Danny's story in full, but without dramatics, no soft piano music. Just facts, photos, and the voice of Ellie reading a poem she wrote for school, titled, "The First Sound I Ever Made." Meanwhile, Dia Kim Lawson held a press conference. We will review all chain of custody procedures and the handling of evidence in the Carter case. We take this failure seriously, and I offer my personal apology to R. Carter and his family. Some called it damage control. Others called it too little too late. But the bigger firestorm was Caleb Sloan's signed confession. With his cooperation, the court issued a warrant for Dennis Dalton, the scrapyard owner who had coordinated the theft ring and coached Caleb into silence. Dalton was arrested within 48 hours and indicted on multiple counts: theft, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to defraud the court. But as cameras followed the legal fallout, Danny and Ellie stayed quiet. They went home. The house wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, linoleum kitchen, a porch swing that groaned when it rained, but it was safe. The kind of place where peace grows slowly. That first night back, Danny cooked pancakes, Ellie's favorite, and played Old Sam Cooke on the record player. "You okay?" He asked her as they sat on the couch. She nodded, then looked up at him with serious eyes. "I'm glad people know now," she said. "But I don't want them to stare at me." "They won't," he said. "They'll forget soon enough." She shook her head. "I don't want to be a story. I just want to be your girl." He smiled. "That's all you've ever been." She stood, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled down an old shoebox. Inside were all her drawings. Crayon versions of their life, her in pigtails, him in coveralls, their house, the dog they used to have. At the very bottom was the photo he had shown in court. She stared at it for a long time. "You think my real mom's still out there?" she asked. Danny sat beside her, silent. "Maybe," he said. "But that doesn't change who you are now. Or who you are to me." She nodded slowly, then placed the photo back in the box. "I want to keep it, not because I need it, just because it's mine." The next day, Judge Harlan returned to physical therapy. The nurse noticed something. "You walked more today," she said. "Something different?" He paused, then smiled. "Someone reminded me what grace looks like." 6 weeks later, the courtroom was quieter. No cameras, no press. Just a final hearing to close the case files. Danny Carter sat beside Sarah Pike one last time, his hand resting on the edge of the table like someone ready to rise, but unsure if he needed to anymore. Across from him, Judge Harlan reviewed the file. Not the original one, now tattered from months of chaos, but a clean copy. One with corrections, redacted charges, updated names, truth, Mr. Carter, the judge said. "The court recognizes your exoneration and expresses deep regret for the miscarriage of justice. You have the right to pursue damages, both civil and state compensation." Danny shook his head. "I just want peace." "Then the court grants it," Harlan replied, gently closing the folder. "Officially and finally." Sarah leaned over. "That's it." "You're clear," Danny exhaled. A deep, slow breath that seemed to leave the weight of everything behind. Outside the courthouse, Caleb Sloan stood on the steps alone. He wore an oversized hoodie and kept his head down. A few protesters gathered nearby, holding signs that read "Lear" and "Tell the whole truth." Tyrell Brooks approached him, mic in hand. "No camera. You gonna talk?" Tyrell asked. Caleb shook his head. "Not yet. Maybe never." Tyrell didn't push, just stood beside him. Caleb eventually muttered, "You ever carry a lie so long it feels like your name?" Tyrell nodded. "Yeah, but the truth gets louder. That's what burns." Caleb looked over. "You think I'll ever fix what I broke?" "No," Tyrell said, honest and low. "But you can stop breaking more." Back at home, Ellie was cleaning her room when she found a notebook under her bed. One she thought she'd lost. Inside were the letters she'd written to God after the courthouse prayer. Most of them were simple. "Please don't let Daddy go to jail. Please help people know he's good. Please make the scary lady lawyer get a cold." She smiled at that one. But the last page was different. A drawing. It showed a box, not a treasure chest or a shoebox, but a cardboard one with a baby inside. She didn't remember drawing it. In the corner, she'd written, "Don't throw this away. It might be me." She stared at it for a long time, then carefully tore it out. Later that evening, she handed it to Danny. "Did I ever draw this before you told me?" Danny's hands trembled. "I don't think so." "Then how did I know?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe some stories live in us before we're old enough to remember them." She crawled into his lap. For a while, neither of them said anything. The world outside moved on. Dalton pled guilty. Took a deal. 27 months for fraud and obstruction. No cameras, no protests, just time in a locked door. Kim Lawson took an indefinite leave from the DA's office. Some said she was being encouraged to retire. Others said she'd simply had enough. Either way, her name disappeared from press releases. Tyrell Brooks' story on Danny and Ellie was nominated for a Peabody Award. He didn't expect it, said he didn't care. But when the letter came, he taped it above his desk. In small towns, time doesn't erase things, it just folds them. People still whispered at the market, at the post office, in church pews, but their voices had changed. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It was awe and discomfort. Because miracles unsettle people more than monsters. They make you ask what you would have done if you'd been there. One afternoon, Danny was under a car, changing a transmission, when he heard small footsteps. "Dad?" He rolled out. Ellie stood there holding a folded paper. "I wrote something," she said, "for school. They want us to tell our origin story, like superheroes." Danny froze. "Can I read it to you?" He nodded. She unfolded the paper. "My name is Ellie Grace Carter," she read. "When I was a baby, someone didn't want me, but then someone else heard me cry. He didn't run. He didn't wait. He just picked me up. She looked up briefly. Danny swallowed hard. He didn't know what I'd become. He didn't know my name. But he gave me one. He said grace means something you don't earn, but get anyway. So that's what I am. She smiled. And I'm keeping it forever. Danny pulled her close. I wouldn't change a thing, he whispered. 1 week later, a letter arrived addressed to the Carter family. There was no return address. Inside, a single note. I'm sorry, I was scared. I was broken. I was 17. I never forgot her. I hope she sings loud. No signature, no postmark. Danny placed it in a drawer and never showed Ellie. Some things aren't lies. They're just pieces of someone else's sorrow. Judge Harlan retired quietly the following spring. No ceremony, no plaque. He moved to a cottage near Norris Lake, where he spent mornings walking through shallow water, letting his legs remember. Sometimes he carried a cane. Sometimes he didn't. In his final interview, a reporter asked if he believed in miracles. He smiled. Not until one spoke in court wearing pink barrettes and a denim jacket. It was a spring morning when Ellie stood in front of her, second grade class, holding a piece of paper that shook in her hands, not from fear, but from the bigness of the moment. Her teacher had said the prompt was where I come from. Most kids talked about states, cities, family trees. Ellie's story was different. My name is Ellie Grace Carter, she read. When I was a baby, someone left me. I was found in a box. But I don't live in that box anymore. Her voice didn't tremble. I live in a house with creaky floors and a dad who knows how to fix things. He fixes cars, but also fixes bad days, broken feelings, and sometimes pancakes that didn't flip right. The room was still. My grandma says I was never thrown away. She says I was hidden for someone who would find me. Ellie paused, then smiled. He did. Later that day, Danny stood outside the classroom, watching through the window as the kids clapped. Ellie didn't see him, but he saw her. It never stopped hitting him, the way she carried light. As if everything she had been through hadn't dimmed a single part of her. It had refined her. That night, she curled up next to him on the porch swing, her head resting on his chest. Do you think she's still out there? She asked softly. Danny didn't ask who. He already knew. I don't know, he said. But I know wherever she is, she heard you speak today. Would you want her to meet me? He paused. I'd want her to see you, not because she deserves it, but because you do. Ellie thought for a moment. I think I'd tell her thank you. Danny raised an eyebrow. For what? For not keeping me if she couldn't love me. 'Cause maybe I wouldn't be with you. Danny didn't respond. He just pulled her closer. Weeks passed. Spring turned to summer. Life moved forward. Danny took on more jobs. He finally upgraded the shop tools, thanks to a community fundraiser that raised over $14,000 in a week. He refused most of it, but agreed when they insisted it wasn't charity, it was thanks. Sarah Pike got offers from bigger firms in Nashville, but she turned them down. She said some victories don't need new cities, just deeper roots. Tyrell Brooks was offered a spot on national TV. He took it, but only to talk about Ellie's case. He made one thing clear. This wasn't a story about a crime. It was a story about a girl who changed the courtroom without understanding a single law. And Judge Harlan? He visited only once more months later. He arrived unannounced, driving himself, walking without aid. He sat on Danny's porch and drank sweet tea while Ellie played in the yard. You were right, he said finally. She was never a case. She was a mirror. Danny nodded. I didn't rescue her. I just listened when no one else did. The judge looked at him, and when the time came, she spoke when no one else dared. There was silence. Then Ellie called out, Judge Harlan, wanna see my cartwheel? The old man smiled. Wouldn't miss it. She did 3 in a row, landing on her knees, giggling. He clapped like it was a standing ovation. Before he left, He handed Danny a folded paper. It was a single paragraph from an unpublished memoir he'd begun writing. It read, "I once believed truth lived in evidence, in rules, in silence. But truth came to me wearing sneakers and pigtails, and she called a broken man daddy. That truth made me stand." The porch swing creaked behind him as he walked away. Time passed. Years, not just months. Ellie grew up. Her hair got longer, her laugh louder. She joined choir, played softball, learned to argue like Sarah and write like Tyrell. She made people see her and remember her, but she never changed her name. College applications came, scholarships, excitement. On her essay, under the field for full legal name, she paused, then wrote, Ellie Grace Carter, and below that, she added, just once, Grace isn't my middle name. It's my beginning. One morning, long after Danny's beard had grayed and Ellie had moved to Nashville for school, a package arrived at the old house. No name, just the address. Inside was a photograph aged, a little water damaged. It was of a teenage girl, no older than 17, holding a newborn, standing behind the Riverbend Clinic sign. No note, no return address, but Danny understood. He placed it in a frame, not on the wall, not in public, but inside Ellie's old room, beside her first drawing. The one that said, "Don't throw this away. It might be me." And so it ends not with a gavel or a headline, but with the quiet truth that some miracles don't come crashing in. They arrive as cries in the dark, as footsteps behind a clinic, as a little girl with a voice so honest, it stops time, and that's enough. That's everything.